In progress.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We're continuing in Mishna Berura Daf Hashavua. We're learning Siman Pei Beis. Siman Pei Beis. Good morning everyone. Din Tsaya Yavesha, the din of dry Tsaya. The din of dry Tsaya. Says the Mechaber, Tsaya Yavesha, dry Tsaya, Kol Kach, that's so dry, Shem Yizrukena, if you would throw it, Tis Parech, it would crumble, Harehi Ka'afar, it's like dust, Umutter Likros Connect, you had to say, Tvam Shev Kedusha opposite it, V'hu Shalo Yav Ra, as long as it doesn't have a bad odor. Haga, V'yeshar Medoy, Hava Ka'afar Rakim Nefrechas Al Yidei, Galila B'lo Yizrika. Some say, the Rama says, that it's not considered like dust unless it crumbles by rolling it without throwing it. V'chein ikar, this is the ikar. By the way, I was just learning about the Rama, because we're going to be in Krakow for Shabbos at the Rama's cover for the yard site. The notes on the Rama where it says Rashi v'Harash were not written by the Rama. I mean, I think if you would ask most people, they would have known that, but still, I saw definitively that was written by later Talmid Chachamim. They added the sources of the Rama, and this is very interesting, and it's not always right. Since the Rama did not write it, it's not always correct that that's the Rama's source. Okay? Fine. It says in Mishna Berura, Tis Parech, V'davka leperuchin dakin, only fine crumbs. Aval l'shnayim u'shloisha loy mahani. But 2 or 3, it does not help. In other words, it has to crumble and sort of disintegrate, but not into 2 or 3 pieces. Uvimei hakar, and in the days when it's cold, shahatsoya nikreshes harbe ke'even, when it's cold and the tsoya is congealing like a stone, v'gam in magia azmen shum sechan, and nothing smells. Nistapik hamagen ram yishar likros connected. The magen ram is mesupik, whether you can read opposite it. Ibasar hashta azlinon. Do we go by now? Meaning, and now it's frozen, it's a piece of ice, or does it still retain the status and the name of being tsaya, because it could always revert back to the way it was when it warms up. The achronim are maskim that it's aser. Frozen tsaya is aser. So let's say you're in the tundra, you're in Russia, and it's freezing outside, and there's a piece of tsaya on the floor. The fact that it doesn't smell does not make it not tsaya. V'yaf b'diavad, and even b'diavad, imkara tzarach lachsa v'likros kriya shema l'spal v'tars nadava, and even b'diavad, if you said shema, you'll have to read it again, and if you davened, you'll have to daven again as a tfilas nadava. What's a tfilas nadava? The der should bring Siman Kuf Zayin Siv Katan Beis. You should make a stipulation and say, if I was not yotzei my tefillah, this should be my tefillah, and if I was already yotzei, then this tefillah should be l'nadava. V'im atzaya tachas mayim krushim efshad have a kisoi. If the tsaya is under congealed water, efshar, it could be to have a kisa that it's covered. Afal gav de mayim loy mahani. Even though water doesn't help. Ayin b'simin, ayin vav, mikamakom geled ukvar yesh loimer dahavel b'chlal v'chisisa. Nevertheless, ice and frost, you could say it's called v'chisisa. Even though by erva water will not be a cover, unless it's dirty. Geled ukfar, you could say it is v'chisisa, and we go, and it's like glass, ubasar hashta azlinan, and we go by the way it is now. I thought glass was a cover for tsaya. No? Didn't we have that glass was a cover for tsaya? Who remembers that it's a din in v'chisisa? It's not a din in seeing. Erva is a din in lo yera b'cha ervas davar. But glass, no, didn't we have that? Wasn't that in the beginning of the Siman that there's a difference between tsaya and erva? But it could be that even though glass is a covering, but ice maybe is not, because since it will revert to being water, so then maybe that's not considered a covering. Vitsoya sheniskasa b'sheleg, tsoya covered in snow, chashav kisoy. So frost is a question, but snow is a cover. Kol kama shlei nimcha hasheleg, so long as the snow does not melt. Kasav b'sefer shulchan shloimai, duad din neged meir raglayim krushim, also opposite frozen urine. Gam ken yesh lahachmer shlo likrois kenegdan. V'tzarch iyan b'zeh, it's a tzarch iyan whether this is in fact a problem. Okay, sif beis, meir raglayim shenivlu b'karka. If you have urine absorbed in the ground, if it would make the hand moist, you can read opposite it. Some say that it won't be an issue if it makes your hand moist. It has to be able to make your hand moist, that your hand could then make something else moist. That's the concept of toifeach almanas lahatpiach, where it makes wet with the ability to make something else wet. So the mechaber is machmer if it makes your hand wet. The Ramah says, some say only if your hand could then make something else wet. V'yesh lismei chazah, you could rely on this. Says the Mishna bakarka, if it's absorbed in the ground, or bebeged lahatpiach perush emayniach yadei aleim, that if you put your hand on it, ma'ale lachos ba, it would take up moisture. That if you would put it on something else, that something else would then attain moisture. If it's not that moist that it could transfer to something else, when you touch it to be able to transfer to something else, it's mutter. This is a consensus of all the achronim. It's only if it is wet on condition to make something else wet. Then you need to distance 4 amos kamay mitzaya, like from tsaya. When we come up, since it's not extant, it's just absorbed in the ground. It's absorbed in the ground or in a garment. You do not have to pour a revius according to everyone. Eladai, it's enough that you bring on it, rak ma'admin ha'ma'ad mayim, meaning you don't have to be mavatal by pouring a revius. It's enough to put on it a little bit of water. She'ein bahem gamkein rak toifech amanas latviach. A little bit of water, that water is enough that if you touch it, you could transfer its moisture to somewhere else. Vishari. And then it would be permitted. V'ayin le'el b'siman ayin zayin b'Mishna Berura. Okay, so this is the din of tsaya Yevesha, where if it's under Mayim Krushim, it could be that is a cover. But it could be Geled and Kfar is more of a cover than Mayim, even though Mayim does not help for Ervan. L'chora, Geled and Kfar doesn't help either, but it's considered V'chisisa. Okay, Rabbi, so we'll hold over here. We'll see everybody tomorrow at same time, 9 o'clock. Okay, thanks everybody for joining. Kol Tov.
Recording stopped.